Hello, everybody. So today I want to talk about Xometry. This is a stock that came up in my platform screener, and I have done my research. I like the stock very much, and I will be looking for an entry into the stock. I think this is a gem, and I think this stock, as far as platform goes, as a niche, which I view as very unique, very unique. And I think this is a business that could be much bigger than what it actually is right now. Knowing that I've listened to a few of the conference calls, I've listened to a Citibank special conference. Manufacturing is a $2 trillion market, and this is a company that has a dent at disrupting specific parts of that giant market, and that has been doing very well, and that is growing very fast, actually. So, first of all, let me get started with three things. The first point is that you may remember the valuation. So I've updated the valuation for this stock. What got me first attracted to the stock, obviously, is the valuation. So when I look at the valuation, if you're new to the channel, this is how I do it on the channel. I look at this number called enterprise value over gross profit, over revenue growth. And what I ask, what this number means, is how much am I paying for each single percentage point of forward revenue growth. And at a 0.13, it is the cheapest of all of the platforms that I've covered on the channel. And it's probably one of the top 5 cheapest stocks out of the 40 plus stocks that I usually cover on this channel. So it's very inexpensive, especially for platforms, which platforms are a business model that I consider to be a much better business model than all of the other business models, because with platforms you don't make anything, right? You are a layer, a transaction layer, a trust layer, an enabler of transactions, but you actually don't make the products. Xometry doesn't make the products, right? It provides this transaction layer, but it doesn't make the products, which is why these companies have a potential to see very high valuation and to be highly valued. And also, they have potential to become monopolies most of the time. Most of the time, networks, platforms, marketplaces become monopoly because the very value of these platforms is how many people are registered on that platform, right? So that's the big advantage of two-sided platforms. Anyways, that number is very inexpensive for a company that is growing at 40% and that has gross margin at 38%. Gross margin has nicely increased over the past year and should increase even more, and we'll see why in a little bit. So things are doing great for Xometry. Actually, 40% growth is an acceleration, right? So that's what we're predicted. We're predicted to grow 40% over the next 12 months. That's an acceleration from the 38% we had in the past year, right? In the past 12 months. And so the fact that it grew this much already in this environment is stunning, but that's growing more. That's growing even more over the next 12 months. I also want to point out that, of course, cash flow is not an issue. You may know what I care about when I invest in all the stocks that I own. I care about them not going out of business and not having to do another capital raise. This is not a problem for Xometry. The cash burn last quarter was $24 million in cash burn, and the cash on the balance sheet is almost $300 million. So they have about 3 years left if they were to lose this much. But management has guided in the latest call that EBITDA profitability, i.e. proxy for positive cash flow, so what I care about the most, they've predicted that to be in Q4 2023, so they will not drain that cash anymore, in 4 months' time. And as far as net income profitability, Q4 2024, this is more relevant for the market as a whole because the market cares about having a PE. I typically don't care about that. I want to see top-line growth. That's what I care about. In other words, raising new money is not a concern for Xometry, and that's what I care about. So, business growing fast, 40% revenue growth, great gross margin, EBITDA profitability coming, and now let me tell you what I always find more interesting in these analyses, especially if you want to own a stock for a long run, right? For 10 years, that's what I want. What I find more interesting is the qualitative analysis. What makes this a highly desirable business. And so let me get started and tell you about the business. So Xometry is the Uber for custom parts. And you may say, well, that doesn't make any sense to compare it to Uber. Uber is transportation business, Xometry is manufacturing. Yes, as far as the product is entirely different, but the way they charge is very, very similar to Uber. Is pretty close to Uber. So Uber is actually the right frame of comparison in the way this company makes money, because Xometry is a spread platform and not a fixed fee platform. So you may know that Airbnb, for example, has a fee of about 15%. And so people listing a home on Airbnb, they list the house for $200 and say a night, and say Airbnb will take 15%. And that's the price, right? This is not how Xometry works. Xometry does not have a fixed margin or a fixed price, right? What it does is it has, in a nutshell, opaque pricing, and the pricing is kind of this black box, and the pricing is determined by the algorithm. It's the algorithm that determines the pricing. And so what happens is, whenever a engineer somewhere requests that a part be manufactured in AutoCAD or Solidworks, they click request quote. And when they have request quote and they like the quote, they click on the button, they say, oh, order part. And when they click on order part, the machine of Xometry got into place, and the algorithm starts working. And what it will do is it will ping machinists or print shops, specialists, all of these small independent suppliers that typically only focus on certain industries. They're typically very small firms. All of these machinists, I'm going to call them machinists, but you know what I mean. It's maker of parts, which are typically small business. They will get a ping on their phone or on their computer and be like, okay, this is the part I want you to make, this is the price. And then they have an hour or two to decide, yes, I accept, no, I refuse, right? So it works the same as Uber, right? If you drive for Uber, your phone starts ringing and you get a ping, and you have, 15, 30 seconds to decide whether you want to take the ride or not. This is the same for Xometry, and it allows them to have a very, very flexible pricing with some situations where they make a lot of money, right? Well over 50% gross margin on the part manufactured, and other situations where they make way less money. And this depends on the supply and the demand, right? And the algorithm will typically adjust the price until it finds someone willing to make the part. So that's why the algorithm is so powerful, because the algorithm will always try, for example, to send a lowball offer out, and then if they see that it's not accepted, it will go to another one and go to another one and raise prices. So it finds the proper margin for each part. Each part over time gets charged what is the most optimal margin. And so this is very similar to what Uber does. And you may know Uber, if you follow Uber, you may know that, some rides, if you ever take Uber, it's often a good idea to ask how much you're getting paid for that ride. And you'll see sometimes, like I've asked Uber drivers, and sometimes they get paid more than I've paid sometimes. And other times, it's rare. It's very rare. More often what happens is that some Uber rides say will cost $80, and so it's $80 for you, and you just found out that the driver is making $25. Well, that's Uber having a 60-70% gross margin. Obviously, if they had a stated margin like Airbnb at 15%, they could not decide to do a 5x on that margin. But Xometry can do that, which I find fascinating. What does Xometry do? What industry, what kind of manufacturing do they do? Well, it's worth noting that we do both prototyping and market parts and production. But I'll show you the type of sectors that they operate in. So of course I'm using CNC machining as a proxy, but it's not just that. It's not just machining. It's also printing and molding and injection molding and weld mounts and tube cutting and laser jet and extrusion and metal stamping and die casting. So they do all sorts of different parts manufacturing by typically specialist firms, right? So, but I call these machinists as It's easier for me to call this machinist, but it's much more than just that. And they will do both prototypes and production. And they have this land and expand model. I'll get into it in the next slide, but they have this land and expand model where they try to get into an industry and then take over the industry and get into another one and into another one, into another one. So these are the different industries that vary. And if you listen to the call, it's fascinating. You're like, oh, we have Xometry parts in satellites, and we have Xometry parts in R&D offices, and their parts make their way even in final products. Of course, the CEO cannot say a lot of customers because they need to have authorization from their customers to say which customer uses Xometry. But the CEO did say that clear. So you may have seen this in airports. This is like a terminal in airport. So the CEO did say in the call that this was manufactured on Xometry. So this is the type of product that you can manufacture from parts that are made on the Xometry platform. So the CEO mentioned that. So we can imagine a lot of products out there that perhaps don't have really mass manufacturing, but big enough manufacturing, kind of a sweet spot, are actually made on the Xometry platform. So this is quite interesting to me, actually. So the value proposition, there's a great value proposition. The value proposition for the big businesses is that they can just deal with one dashboard, and they don't have to deal with finding small shops, and they don't have to deal with the quoting and accepting the quote and negotiating the quote process, right? This is a very long process that they don't have to deal with because they just deal with Xometry, right? And as far as the small machining shops, and this is a problem that small shops have too, is that sometimes a shop will be sitting without a client for a long while and will have trouble finding clients because the industry is so scattered. The industry is all over the place. The industry is disintermediated, and it may be very hard for a small machine shop to find a client. So it solves problems for both big business and small businesses. And where I think this is so powerful is that Xometry is integrated, can be integrated within your business. So it's almost like an API. It's almost like businesses are becoming these giant machines with less and less human intervention. And this is a streamlined process, right? There's less and less emails. There's less and less communication on the phone that happens. Everything happens through IT rails, through digital rails. And this is why you could have entire companies that have supply chain networks that are embedded with Xometry, where Xometry is the link, that layer of trust between thousands of small suppliers and the big business. And where this comes to the most alive to me is two ways. Well, first of all, the supplier management. It's entirely possible for a supplier to do most of their business through the Xometry platform, and Xometry actually can handle running your business for you. Just like a rideshare driver, for example, will have their Lyft app and their Uber app, and that will be the main ERP of their small quote-unquote taxi business. Like your small taxi business, your taxes, everything you're living is entirely managed by this single ERP system that is the app, that is, let's say, the Uber app for Uber, or the Airbnb app for Airbnb host. Well, the same thing for small machine shops, who you can assume still operate through old ways, and phone calls and invoices and broken up Excel spreadsheet, broken up Word documents of sending in the invoice, getting everything paid. Well, all of a sudden, these suppliers can use a single platform that handles everything from quotes to payments to accepting quotes to getting paid, etc. And that's very valuable for the small businesses. But for the big business, for the engineer, this I find extremely powerful, is you can meet Xometry right in the software, where as an engineer you spend most of your day. So let me show you this. So Xometry is embedded in most CAD systems, most software that engineers use to design their parts. They can have an add-on, and with that add-on is the Xometry add-on, and then all of a sudden you can get your part ordered right in your system. This is an example. They have actually a pretty active YouTube channel. Xometry has an active YouTube channel. I will show you how this works. This is a screenshot of their YouTube video. So let's say you want to get a part manufactured. You're right in, I believe this is Solidworks, I'm not sure, but you're right in your software, and you click calculate estimate, and then you click view quote, and you can order the part straight from the software. It's very powerful when this is embedded like this in your software, and you can see their add-ins. They support all different sorts of software. So again, Xometry is getting integrated within the IT systems of very large companies and large businesses. And some of their businesses are Boeing, GE. These are some of the names that they've given up in a few conference calls. But there's a long list of big customers that Xometry has. So let me conclude by saying that I like this company very much. It's been growing very fast, and this is a company, of course, that IPO'd. What is it? 6 or 7 quarters ago. They did a SPAC, so we don't have a lot of look back on the revenue, but you can look at the long term land and expand strategy, what they got started with, and you can see they've had amazing growth, right? So pharmaceutical, the global pharmaceutical companies, they had almost 1,000% growth in 4 years, right? Consumer tech, 250% growth in 5 years. It goes on. They have government agency, right? 400% growth. They've had tremendous growth in EV manufacturers. They even make part for EV manufacturers. Anyways, effective land and expand model that has translated into very high growth. This is why the growth is well above 30%, which is what I look for on the channel. I will not consider a stock if the stock is not growing revenue at more than 30%. I'm happy with them. That's 40%, right? They have 19% insider ownership, and they're still founder-led, so the CEO is still the founder of a firm. As far as stock-based compensation, as you know, I really don't care about stock-based compensation, but I know I'm the only one out there who does not care, so I will talk about stock-based compensation a little bit, because I know many of my viewers care. So stock-based compensation, you'll be pleased to hear that per my calculation, we are at 3% yearly dilution. They give about 5 to 6 million per quarter in SBC, which means that the dilution is more than acceptable. I actually happen to believe that when you give SBC, you acquire the best talent, the best engineers, and as a result of that, the firm grows faster. But they're not using SBC as a large share of the compensation. They are paying their employees with cash, right? This is what I interpret when I look at this. The gross margins are improving, and they will keep improving as AI gets better. As AI knows which supplier is likely to accept which part for the most gross profit and for the most margin. And they have more growth coming. They have more growth coming through new industry verticals that they keep adding, their land and expand strategy, but also through international expansion. And it is true that they are not much present in Europe right now. They're working really hard on European expansion. And so, of course, if they become the leader in this space in both Europe and the USA, it could be a very big company. Noting that they have a little bit of competition. I want to point out they have a little bit of competition. When you look them up, you see Xometry. Xometry always appears on top on research pages, but I've seen some disparate advertising from some competitors that appear to be a little more narrow, but they are the leader, and I think that's what's important. They have a leader, and we know that whenever there's a network, it's the leader that wins. I mean, look at Uber and Lyft, going back to that example. Uber is how many times bigger than Lyft? Right, it's so much better, so much bigger. Right, Airbnb is how many times bigger than Verbo. CrowdStrike is how many times bigger than SentinelOne. That's the nature of platforms. Platforms are winner take most. The bigger platform is going to be where people go because that's the one that has the most people registered on it. And you're going on the platform because you want to get access to the most people to help you out with whatever you're looking to buy. And the last thing I'll say is that, if you care about stock price movements, and it's mostly a psychological thing to see your stock being down compared to where it was or up compared to where it was, but this stock is undercover. It has not been discovered by the market. In fact, the stock is down 75%, like most other SPACs. Some SPACs are down 70, some SPACs are down 80%. This SPAC is down 75%. And why are they down 75% since their SPAC IPO? Well, because Mr. Market said SPAC bad. That's the extent of the thinking, right? That's Mr. Market, SPAC bad. I cannot understand why this stock is so cheap. it is a cheap stock. It is a cheap stock for what it does. And I think it has a very unique strategy, and it is better than a lot of platforms out there. For example, I like it better than Etsy. I like it better than Fiverr, right? I don't know if I like it better than Rover. I think Rover is a very compelling platform too, and Rover has been doing very well, but and it's a different space. But I like this platform a lot. So I will be looking for an entry point. We'll see. Right now, I'm kind of sitting still because on Wednesday we have Tesla, and I'm hoping there's a big drop on Tesla to buy some Tesla. I'm hoping the stock goes down, but otherwise, I think this is a very interesting platform, and I look forward to following this company. Anyways, this was not investment advice ever, just entertainment. I hope you were entertained. I appreciate your likes. I appreciate your subscribes. And please follow me on X @BeatTheDenominator. Thank you for watching, and have a wonderful day.